and thank you for joining us for another installment of California Employment News, a video and podcast resource from the Labor and Employment Group at Weintraub Tobin to provide you with employment law updates and best practices. My name is Katie Collins, and I'm an associate in the Labor and Employment Group at Weintraub Tobin. Today, our topic is San Francisco's Private Sector Military Leave Pay Protection Act, which became operative February 19th, 2023. The ordinance applies to employers with 100 or more employees worldwide. All employees who perform work in San Francisco, including those who are part-time or temporary employees, are covered by the ordinance if they are a member of the Reserve Corps of the United States Armed Forces, National Guard, or other uniformed service organization of the United States. Employees are expected to provide reasonable notice to their employer when the military duty is foreseeable. Covered employers must provide the appropriate military leave pay or supplemental compensation to an employee on military duty for up to 30 days in a calendar year. The leave can be taken in daily increments for 1 or more days at a time. Military duty is considered to be when the employee is deployed to respond to a natural disaster or military conflict or attends required annual military training. The employer must supplement the gross military pay provided to the employee to ensure the employee receives their total gross pay for the schedule they would have worked had they not been required to complete their military duty. This includes overtime if they were regularly scheduled to work overtime hours. Note that gross military pay does not include military pay allowances such as combat, clothing, housing, or aviation. Further, employers do not need to pay employees supplemental compensation for hours when they would have been working outside of San Francisco. Note that if an employee receives supplemental compensation and is fit for employment upon release from military duty, but does not return to their position with the employer within 60 days of release from military duty, the supplemental compensation may, at the employer's discretion, be treated as a loan payable with interest. The ordinance also includes specific notice requirements for employers. Employers should provide employees with notice of their right to supplemental compensation within a reasonable time after the employee tells the employer they received written military orders and will require time off work. Further, the employer should include in its employee handbook a description of employee rights under the ordinance in the next edition of its handbook. If you are a San Francisco employer that has not yet updated your employee handbook this year, now is the time to consider an update. On the other hand, if you just did your annual update per the ordinance, you may wait until your next annual update to include a section on the ordinance. Further, per the ordinance, employers must retain records documenting schedules and hours worked by employees and military leave taken by those employees for a period of 4 years. The ordinance's paid leave requirements are administered and enforced by the San Francisco Office of Labor Standards Enforcement. If found liable for a violation of the ordinance, an employer would be on the hook for payment of any unlawfully withheld supplemental compensation, interest, and liquidated damages in the amount of $50 to each individual whose rights were violated for each day or portion thereof that the violation occurred or continued. Relief could also include the amount of unlawfully withheld supplemental compensation multiplied by 3 or $250, whichever is greater. Finally, a plaintiff could receive their reasonable attorney's fees and costs. As always, should you have any questions about this ordinance and your obligations as an employer to employees on military duty, contact your employment counsel for advice. Well, that's it for today. You can continue to find installments of California Employment News on our blog at www.thelelawblog.com or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Thanks for joining. See you next time.